RWBY Volume 8 is a beautiful mess. This volume generated a lot of noise in the community, and oddly, it feels like people are having totally opposite viewpoints of the volume. Some people absolutely love it, and some people hate it with a passion. Me? Well, I'm kind of on both sides. There are parts of this volume I love, like I truly love. Character motivations I've been waiting to see, plot points I found fun and amazing. There are elements of the show that made me think this would become my new favorite volume for the series. But then, there's parts I hated, I loathed. Confusing plotlines, dropped plotlines, random character motivations, unnecessary motivations, absent motivations. The volume is definitely flawed. Honestly, I'm not even sure where to begin with this review. There's a lot going on in this volume, and trying to break it all down for this critique is going to be hard. I'm worried this video is going to be over an hour long, but I think it's worth it to really take the time to dissect everything in this season of RWBY, to try to fully explain what's so good that made me love the show, and what's so flawed that made me hate it. I can only hope the writers, animators, voice actors, and everyone else who worked on the show watches this review to help them grow and become better at their craft. It's important to remember, we need criticisms in order to grow from our mistakes and learn what we've done right. If something is done exceptionally well, we should learn what made it work. Why was it so good? Why did people love this? That way you can take those skills and incorporate it into your future work to further improve. And if something is done poorly, we need to learn what went wrong. How can it be improved? And where did things start to go awry? That way we can learn to avoid these mistakes again in the future. Like I said, I hope RWBY can see this and try to learn from my critique, but even if they don't, you, whoever you are, watching this video right now, I hope at least you can learn something from what I have to say here. Incorporate my words into your own works. Reflect on your own ideas and projects and try to learn from someone else's successes and mistakes. Let's not beat around the bush anymore, I suppose, and let's try to explain as best I can what happened with RWBY Volume 8. It's no surprise by now that RWBY has a lot of characters. We've got good guys becoming good guys turning bad, side characters, family members, characters we haven't seen in a while brought back, characters we've been dragging around that need to go. We've got a lot of characters, and a lot of different plot threads to follow them all around. Trying to keep track of RWBY's different conflicts have always been a challenge, but this time around it gets especially convoluted. With so many characters in play, and so many different goals and motivations for them all interweaving together, it quickly became very crowded on screen. Not everyone got to play this time around, which is just naturally going to happen when your cast consists of all these characters. The best I can do is to try to break it down into groups, which is exactly what the heroes did.
Okay, then let's go for both.
Our protagonists split themselves into two different factions. RWBY, Weiss, Blake, Penny, and Nora decide to try to hack into Amity to send out a distress signal. Meanwhile, Jean, Yang, Ren, and Oscar stay with Mantle to help fight off the Grimm. Wait, I thought Oscar was separated from everyone. When did that happen? We'll get into that. On the surface, this makes total sense. The team is crowded enough as it is. We've got 9 players involved with our heroes' primary goals, and that doesn't even include Pietro, Maria, or the Happy Huntresses who assist them along the way. The plan makes sense. Salem's forces are right outside the kingdom, and while the shields guard Atlas from the attack for a while, Mantle is still in dire straits from the Grimm. Then it could help warn everyone what they're up against, and maybe they can bring some support to Atlas to help save the people there. However, there's a couple of confusing hiccups here and there. First of all, RWBY's plan with Amity is literally the exact same thing Ironwood wanted to do last volume. But for some reason, RWBY and the team were against the idea of Ironwood using Amity to tell the world about Salem, but then they were. But then that plotline got confused during Volume 7's runtime anyway, and we're not here to talk about Volume 7. We're on Volume 8. I just can't help but feel like this feels all very oddly familiar. Second, the way the team split up is a little confusing. Yang argues with RWBY because Yang isn't happy with RWBY's leadership decisions as of late.
We said we'd follow your lead, but things haven't exactly worked out.
If that sounds completely out of character for Yang, don't worry, it is. Nothing from last volume hinted at the notion that Yang wasn't happy with RWBY's plans, and she definitely never questioned RWBY's merit as a leader. If they wanted the girls to split up from an argument, they could have, but it would have made more sense if RWBY was the one who was upset at Yang. Last volume, Blake and Yang went behind everyone's backs to tell Robin about the tower. We could have used that and had RWBY be upset that Yang did something that ended up causing Ironwood to lose trust in them. However, that wouldn't even have been necessary either. The girls have a heartfelt moment at the end of the volume where they're apologizing to each other and they make up. This could have still happened, and the girls could have still split up from some other argument without forcing Yang to go out of character and question RWBY's skills. The concept just goes nowhere. Yang never brings it back up, RWBY never mentions it again. Hell, in that reconciliation scene later, it doesn't even get talked about. The whole premise feels like an oddly contrived excuse to force the team to split. And then after that, the splitting of the rest of the characters makes no sense either. Like, of course Weiss joins RWBY's team. Weiss has nothing else to do all volume, and her access to the Schnee Dust Company played a huge role in helping them with their plan. And of course Jean is going to be on the ground. He's not stealthy at all, so his efforts are best on the ground where he can be the most useful. But what about Ren and Nora? Their motivations seem to have suddenly switched between volumes. All throughout Volume 7, Nora was arguing with Ironwood about the safety of Mantle. Yet suddenly, now she's going to help with the tower? Rather than stay on the ground and fight for Mantle, that thing she was saying over and over and over again? Like, don't get me wrong, helping with the tower is important too, but it just goes against what Nora's been saying for a whole year. Ren's the same way. He's had his mind set on the big picture with the relics and Amity, and now suddenly he's doing grunt work? Even their skills don't make sense when we think about it. Ren is a ninja, he's stealthy, he would have been much better fit for the sneaking around mission, and Nora has a huge range with her weapon in semblance. She would have been a much bigger help in Mantle to wipe out the hordes of Grimm. Swapping Ren and Nora would mean I would be losing two of my absolute favorite moments from the volume, but the way it's explained, or I guess not explained, just doesn't make this decision on their part make any sense. Blake's in the same boat in a way. She just sort of joins RWBY's team.
Ruby's right. The Happy Huntresses are handling the evacuation better than we could. And there's a bigger picture.
There isn't much explanation beyond that, and like, on one hand, I get it, she's also a ninja, stealth is her thing, but there's this confusing part in the volume where Yang says,
Do you think she thinks less of me?
RWBY is your sister. She's always going to love you.
Yeah. RWBY.
And I think we're meant to believe she's talking about Blake here, but it's not really certain. Also later, when they team back up, Blake looks standoffish, like she expects Yang to be mad at her or ignore her or something. But no, it makes no sense for the girls to think the other is mad at them. They didn't argue. They barely even talked during that scene. Why are they acting like they are the ones who had the big fight? So I'm wondering if initially Yang was supposed to argue with Blake about something, but then the writers were like, oh shit, RWBY doesn't get to be a character this volume. We gotta fix that. So then they just replaced it with RWBY in that scene, and then they kept the weirdness between Blake and Yang throughout the rest of the volume. Episode 1 also does the confusing thing of immediately bringing Oscar back in with the heroes. They find him right away, before any of the heroes actually get a line of dialogue, and by all means this feels unnecessary. Spoiler, he gets kidnapped immediately after teaming up with the heroes again, and I think this was dumb. Like, he doesn't add anything to episode 1, but we'll get more into that later. From this point forward, with our heroes split into 2 teams, we have a grand total of 7 different plot threads to follow. Team Rainbow working with Penny, Pietro, and Maria to get the Amity Tower up and running to send their warning signal out to the rest of the world. Team Jolly fighting off the Grimm and saving Oscar. Oscar, who gets held prisoner by the villains. Robin and Crow planning their revenge on Ironwood and the Aesops trying to kill Salem's forces. Salem attacking the kingdom. And Cinder's team trying to sneak past Salem to get to the Maiden Powers and kill RWBY. That's a lot to follow. Now, I'm sure I know what you're all thinking. I said in the beginning of this review that I really loved parts of this volume. These are all complaints so far. Well, unfortunately, the first episode is one of the weakest. Their plans aren't explained at best or make no sense at worst. From here on out, it definitely gets a lot more entertaining. RWBY as a show has always struggled with its first episodes, and this is no exception. But I think splitting our heroes into 2 teams is the best course of action. Having less people on screen means the characters get to be more personal and have unique conversations. Whenever there's a lot of characters all at once on screen, no one ever really gets to say anything unique. Cutting them up into bite-sized chunks of teams helps make the conversations flow a lot more naturally. Something that I was not disappointed with this volume. Bonus points for not having the usual teams together. Splitting our romantic pairs especially made this a lot more fun whenever the characters started talking. They couldn't just default to the same conversationalists they usually choose. It's fun stuff. These teams don't stay stationary either. They move around, some join different teams, some go off to do their own thing. There's an awful lot to unpack, so let's dive in. It's a shame that 3 of our 4 main girls end up getting ultimately shafted in terms of on-screen development. The crew I've been calling Team Rainbow has the mission of sneaking into Ironwood's office to hack into Amity, allowing Pietro, Maria, and Penny to send out a message to the rest of Remnant informing the world about Salem and asking for help on Atlas's behalf. A task that is ultimately very easily handled. I shouldn't be surprised, I suppose. The heroes have always been really good at sneaking past all defenses to immediately get into whatever it is they wanted to do. The beginning part of their sneaking mission is oddly comedic. In essence, I think the comedy works really well for their antics. However, this mission takes place between 2 incredibly dramatic episodes, which ends up feeling rather tone-deaf in the long run. After they finish their mission, Team Rainbow has nothing to really do. We spend a lot of time hanging around the Schnee Manor, hanging out and waiting for the others to show back up, and it just feels very mismanaged for their time. Like, the kids don't need to be killing monsters or doing some dangerous thing to develop. Even a conversation over tea can be entertaining. Ruby spends a lot of her time being gloomy about the whole situation, but feeling an emotion doesn't mean she gets to grow as a character. Blake and Weiss didn't even get to be that. Weiss reconciles with her family, but that plot point was rushed and overshadowed with everything else happening around them. The scenes involving Rainbow feel wasted. The only character who does get substantial development is May Marigold, a side character. Don't get me wrong, I love May. She's adorable and a lot of fun, but I don't understand why she's the only one who got to grow as a character in these scenes.
And to the Marigolds, that meant I wasn't their son anymore.
Hell, in this scene, the concept of classism gets brought up. We could have had Weiss talk to her about their stance on their family and how they're moving forward. This would have been a fun way to get Weiss to come to terms with forgiving her brother and mother later on. If she got to discuss that concept with May, that way the 2 of them could have developed together. But unfortunately, that never happens. Rainbow scenes feel like they're fluff at best, and at worst a waste of screen time. If we're going to cut back to them just so they can sip on tea, they could at least say something compelling with each other. Of the girls, Nora is the one who gets the most development. I wanted to say this is a very good Nora volume, but it wasn't. Nora gets very, very good development as a character and reaches a fun, new, fascinating direction for her to grow, but this volume does her no favors. It's sort of a shame. After last volume, where she was taking center stage finally, I was really hoping this could be her time to shine. And shine she does. Briefly, like a shooting star. Nora is struggling to be herself. Realizing her relationship with Ren is holding her back. While she may still have feelings for him, she wants to know who she is without him being the center point of her character. It's a very unique and intriguing direction for her. Nora's been stuck drooling over Ren for years, and seeing her finally take charge of her own life is a huge step in the right direction for Nora. Unfortunately, she spends most of her time unconscious. Yes, after Nora breaks free and pushes her anger out, leaving large permanent scars all over her body, she passes out, and then she stays that way for most of the volume. I'm fine with her being injured or bedridden, that makes sense, but the fact we could have seen her talking with the others or continue to discuss her mindset to the girls is such a disappointment. Nora hardly ever gets to talk to the girls from Team RWBY, and it's a shame that opportunity was wasted here. However, I do love the fact she gets scarred like this. Physical changes to our characters can show their growth in a way not often seen with our protagonists. Seeing Nora risk everything, not necessarily because she's trying to be a martyr, but rather out of frustration, anger at her own lack of an impact on the world around her, is one of the most compelling things to ever happen to a character in this show. Nora is flawed. Nora is reckless, and seeing our happy-go-lucky bubblegum cheerleader reach her tipping point and walk away with the second largest physical injury any of our heroes have ever suffered highlights the complexity of her character. She's not just the dumb comic relief. She's a lot deeper than that, and she has had to do it on her own volition. And I give her huge props for taking the strides she has, not only with her own forward momentum, but with her relationship with Ren. After all this time, all she ever wanted was to have Ren admit he loves her like how she loves him.
I love you.
And after this finally happens, Nora has to turn him away. It takes immense strength of will to let him go like this, and I'm so proud of Nora. I'm more excited than ever before to see Nora finally get the chance to be an integral part of this cast. Hopefully next volume she actually gets to do that without having to be unconscious for most of it. Of Team Rainbow, Penny is the one with the most development. However, just like Nora, she spends a lot of her time in sickbay. After Maria and Pietro help to launch the message to the world, Penny gets hacked by Watts. Penny fighting to keep her humanity is a fun plot point. Penny is one of our most powerful characters, and seeing her attacking the heroes is really unnerving. Penny's scenes truly are heartbreaking in moments. So Penny falls and just so happens to crash land right in front of Team Rainbow. It's really convenient, but I can forgive it. Maybe she used the last bit of her humanity to, direct her fall towards Ruby as best she could. I don't know. Penny's arc is a lot of fun, and was definitely the plot point that kept me on the edge of my seat the most during the runtime of the volume. Penny's human emotions are the most endearing part of her character, and seeing those emotions tether her to her friends is a beautiful way to complement Penny's character growth. While Team Rainbow really felt shafted when it came to their scenes, Team JOLY, on the other hand, feels like the true protagonists of this volume. They're definitely the most active in terms of combating the villains' forces, and have interesting character moments with each other. Even when they're sitting around, their conversations are still worthwhile. Team JOLY head out to fight the Grimm, when suddenly Oscar gets kidnapped by a big, bad, new Grimm, the Hound. This creature is unlike anything we've ever seen. It can shapeshift, it can talk, it can fly. This big baddie swoops in and steals Oscar away, forcing Team JOLY to shift gears and focus on rescuing their friend. Ultimately, though, it ends in failure. Oscar is taken away to Salem, and JOLY needs to try to make it back to the city one way or another. So, let's address the problem I've noticed. What was the point of Oscar teaming back up with the heroes? At the end of Volume 7, Oscar crash lands into the middle of Mantle somewhere, and I was pretty dang hyped. I couldn't wait to see how he was going to make his way back to the others, but then he was just immediately reunited with them, just to immediately get separated from them again. Do you see what I'm saying? I think the story would have progressed a little more naturally if Oscar was never found by the heroes. What my plan is would also help with an issue others had with the introduction of the Hound. It jumps in, kicks Oscar's shit in, and while it transforms, the others just sort of sit around. While I was watching the scene initially, I didn't notice this fact. It is a very thrilling moment. However, I can't deny that once you pay attention to it, it is a little eyebrow-raising how the heroes seemingly just give up and let the Hound take their friend. My suggestion is show us Oscar trudging his way towards the Happy Huntress's camp. We don't see him eating soup or anything, he's just trying to get back to civilization. We can even keep his inner discussions with Ozpin like we already have, just not on the motorcycle. Then, suddenly, when Team JOLY head out, they see Oscar in the distance. Excited, the team shout out to Oscar, who looks elated that he's finally found his friends. However, just in that instant, the Hound jumps out and takes Oscar away. It would have taken out the combat we have here, but it would have given the Hound an excuse for his transformation to take so long. Team JOLY would have to take a while to get closer to him, especially if, Ren tried shooting it and it did that thing where it holds up Oscar's body as a shield. I think it would have helped the flow of the narrative a lot better than the confusing resetting of Oscar's plotline after only 2 episodes. Of our 3 characters, Jean gets the least amount of development, and I think that's fine. Like I said for Volume 7, Jean was the center focus for most of Volumes 4 through 6. Having him be in a more of a supportive role is refreshing, especially since he's a lot of fun this time around. He gets the most comedic scenes, which, similar to what I said before, is funny in a vacuum. However, they're usually surrounded by serious moments which dampen the mood a bit. But Jean's not just funny. His heartfelt dialogue is some of the best of the volume. His semblance isn't the only thing that amplifies the people around him. His general personality elevates the others with their struggles. Speaking of which, Ren and Yang take center stage as our most developed members of our main characters.
I hate to break it to you, but that's part of being a huntsman.
Are you kidding? We don't know the first thing about being huntsmen.
We've got the maiden.
And by keeping her from opening the vault for Ironwood, we're just trapping the whole city for Salem.
You think Alice is still going to be able to float to safety now that she's here?
I don't know. You cheated your way into bacon.
Seriously,
Is your goal just to push everyone away?
Ren and Yang have never gotten to talk to each other much before, and seeing them butt heads here is something we don't get to see with our protagonists in RWBY very often. This argument they have is probably the most visceral moment these characters have had for quite a while, and I love highlighting how they're flawed. They can't just be heroes all the time, they get frustrated. Ren's mindset makes sense. They've done nothing much in terms of actually helping to save the world, and when that seems like an impossible task to begin with, it makes sense he would be at his wit's end. And the headstrong Yang, who fights her way through almost any obstacle, would struggle with understanding Ren's defeatist attitude. This conflict is really, really good. So it's a shame it never really got a conclusion.
He believes we're going to get this done.
Then I do too.
Yang and Ren settle their differences by just telling us how much they like Jean.
Him, on the other hand, there's no fear at all.
Why? It's incredibly disappointing how this plot point doesn't seem to be getting a resolution anytime soon. Maybe this will be something we can continue to develop in future volumes, but I find that to be a bit of a letdown. Sure, there's plenty of plot points that stretches across multiple years of development, but sometimes I think it would benefit the show if the narrative just kept it a little more tightly packed, or at the very least, don't end it like this. I don't like the accusations of Jean being a self-insert for Miles Luna. That's an assholey thing to say, to the point where the writers have gone on record saying that Miles actively tries to make sure he doesn't write for Jean as much as possible, to try to get rid of these accusations, which is sucky. However, when things like this happen, it's not really doing anything to help your case. Also, you might have noticed Team Jolly is in a weird looking place, like a villainous place. That's because that's what this is. The Aesops floop in and nab the team after watching a River of Grimm do an anti-waterfall maneuver, and the heroes convince Winter to let them try to finish their side quest before killing the final boss, and Winter agrees. Then they just show up in the whale. It's incredibly disappointing. The world right outside of Monstra is a literal war between soldiers and Grimm, and yet Team Jolly just skipped past it. Apparently the creators' plans were to have them going through Monstra's butt, but then that got dropped. I'm going to say a bad explanation is better than no explanation. It's such a shame, because this is an interesting idea for a conflict for our characters. Having them jump over the adventure of this adventure makes this whole resolution here feel hollow. Like, imagine if in Lord of the Rings we didn't see Sam and Frodo climbing up Mount Doom. They just stood below it and said, "Let's go," and then the next thing we knew they were at the top, and like, Sam was suddenly cracking jokes left and right.
It's going to be like finding a needle in a giant whale. Why did we think this was a good idea?
Yeah, at this point, Yang's character changes very suddenly. She went from being,
What you're saying is it can't be done. It's pointless. Oh, I'm sorry things aren't going smoothly enough for you. This one did. If you would just let us go.
to
Charge blindly into danger.
this sudden shift in Yang's character really comes out of nowhere and does nothing to help her development. She just charges into the most dangerous environment she's ever been in, and then her mood ring decides to start shining bright-ass pink. It's even worse because after she jazzes her way around Monstra all smiles and sunshine, they get face-to-face with Salem, and then she goes back to being all moody broody.
Summer Rose. My mom.
It just makes her sudden character shift feel even more pointless and confusing. Yeah, you can headcanon an answer for her. Oh, she's just putting on a happy face to distract herself from the danger of the situation or whatever. But that's just your assumptions. In universe, this 180 in Yang's character gets zero explanation and ultimately only hurts her development. It makes it feel like she's not taking this seriously, which is a shame because this is supposedly their final fight for Team Jolly. With our cast being as massive as it is, it makes sense that some of our characters were going to have to fall to the wayside. In this volume, it's our Golden Oldies who have been shoved out of the limelight. I have no problem with this. After all, I would much rather keep the focus on our original main characters. Maria and Pietro just really sort of vanish, like they're just suddenly not there anymore, to the point where I was actually startled when I remembered who they were. The worst part is, no one even mentions them, or where they are. Hey Ruby, do you still give a shit about Maria? No? Well, alright then. Hey Penny, do you think you should phone your dad and tell him about your plans? No? Well, if you insist. I have no problems with Maria and Pietro getting left out. Honestly, I think it's for the better. There's not really much they can do anymore, and I'd hate for them to take away any interesting character moments from our main protagonists. On the bright side, what we did get from them was a lot of fun. Maria got a cool little fight that was a lot of fun, and Pietro had some really heartfelt moments with Penny.
I lost you before. And you're asking me to go through that again? No. I want the chance to watch you live your life.
Just some amazing voice acting and powerful emotions from these characters. Crow, unfortunately, doesn't get such good treatment. He gets stuck in prison for 90% of this volume. He's only in a handful of episodes and he barely gets to actually do anything. Worst of all, he seems permanently stapled to Robin. Ugh. I can tell these scenes are supposed to be convincing me that Robin and Crow are slowly learning to trust each other, but they really don't work. Crow is too focused on the loss of Clover from last volume. Robin, on the other hand, is kind of just meanders around a million different topics trying to be funny. It got especially bad when she tried to convince Crow that her semblance was like his. It's not. These scenes are boring and only ever interrupt the flow of the narrative. I find them so mind-numbing that I always end up just thinking about how stupid this layout is. Who designed this? RWBY usually has some pretty decent location settings, but this is just stupid. Why are they all right next to each other? And why are all the walls see-through? Watts is right next to Jacques. These two worked together to rig the election and hack into the heating grid. Do you not think you should maybe separate those two? Jacques is also right next to Robin, the girl he screwed over in the election. Don't you think it'd be good to split them for safety reasons? Crow was last seen with Robin. Don't you think if they were able to talk to each other, they could come up with a plan to help them escape? There's no privacy with these cells, and I really don't understand why they didn't just give them separate holding rooms. It's all just contrived feeling, rushed and never given a second thought. Just make it all one convenient room for them all to be in, right next to each other, so then they can all escape in one final jailbreak. That is, except for Jacques. Cinder, finally, after all these years, finally got a backstory. Yes, the one thing I've been waiting to see from Cinder all this time, we finally got it. Little sad baby Cinder, adopted into an abusive household and ends up killing them all, cementing her life as one filled with hardships and endless killing. I saw a lot of people didn't like this episode, and I can't understand where they're coming from. It is just Cinderella's story, only she kills them at the end. I wish there would have been a little more in referencing the original fairy tale. This one feels very Disney-inspired. If you've read the actual Grimm brothers' retelling of Cinderella, you know that what Cinder does to her family is not that surprising, and it's actually super tame compared to the original fates that befell her stepsisters. However, I actually really liked the story. It was simple and about what we all expected, but I thought it was great, finally getting deeper insight on our main villain. Unfortunately, it sort of just barely misses the mark. First of all, while I may really like finally seeing the story told, I have to admit it feels pretty randomly thrown into the middle of the volume. Understanding her history doesn't motivate Cinder in any way throughout this volume. It just helps tell us why she stays obedient to Salem despite the pain it causes her. Like literal pain. This backstory sort of just pops up, then is never mentioned again. And I wish it had more purpose with the events of this volume since we've been waiting so long to see it. The other thing is, it doesn't actually tell me the part I wanted to see. How did Cinder meet Salem? We have no idea how Salem actually met any of her followers, and Cinder is the one I'm most excited to see. There's a big step between the little girl in that hotel and the teenager who enlists the help of a thief in a back alleyway. I really wish we got to see that part too. As for what actually happens in this volume, Cinder takes charge trying to get the maiden powers. She brings Emerald and Neo along with her, but ends up failing miserably. Again, as Cinder's gonna do what Cinder does best. Another failure under Cinder's belt, which all ends up coming to a head when Watts flat out tells her it's her reckless behavior contributing to her failures.
Can't just be strong, you have to be smart. Can't just be deserving, you have to be worthy.
And she realizes he's right. Watts becomes surprisingly one of the best characters this volume. His rant against Cinder truly is the climax of his character, but he stayed as a consistently intriguing character in the episodes leading up to that moment, playing an integral role in the plot by infecting Penny with the virus, and being one of our main links between the events of Ironwood's planning and their effects on the heroes. Though his scenes are brief, his sassy, arrogant personality really gets to shine, no matter what he's doing. He ends up teaming up with Cinder, and it's a lot of fun seeing such bitter rivals actually working together without just spitting out petty insults the entire time. As the third part of this team, Neo is almost the exact opposite of Watts. She's looking out for me, myself, and I, and is never a team player. Yeah, she joins Cinder on her mission, but a lot of Neo's personality has been stripped away. And let's be honest, it's not like she had much of a personality to begin with. We never see our little Harlequin smile anymore. She's lost that slightly playful edge to her combat style and mannerisms. Now it's all just, I want to kill Ruby, and she's become a boring, brooding grump who just rolls her eyes and frowns all the time. Worst of all, she doesn't even get in any good combat scenes for this volume. All of Neo's fights are brief and underwhelming. I'm assuming her gigantic dumb hair is getting in the way of her being more of an acrobat. That, or the choreographers are just struggling with making her as much fun on the battlefield as she used to be. Emerald rounds out Cinder's teammates throughout this volume, and boy howdy, you'll either love what's happened to her or hate it. And I hate it. Yes, after vanishing for a year and then sitting around doing nothing an entire year before that, Emerald arrives back on scene with Mercury and Hazel and immediately reunites with Cinder.
I've been working on my semblance. I can help.
Intriguing. Unfortunately, Emerald's first foray back on screen is a bit of a flop. She doesn't even pull out her weapons until after the fight is over. Then after that, Cinder goes off and breaks Watts out of jail, and Emerald apparently completely forgets Cinder even exists. Yeah, she goes from, Cinder, I'll always be right here with you, to, I'm helping the heroes, in the span of like 2 episodes. Worst of all, it doesn't even get any explanation or setup. Cinder leaves on her mission, and then the next thing we see Em doing is sneaking around the whale, where she just happens to overhear Oscar telling Hazel about the lamp. Then she just shows up with them, and they get the lamp, and Hazel tells her she's going to be a good guy now.
And that starts with getting you away from here. Both of you.
Like, I'm not even kidding, Emerald has no say in the matter. She just suddenly joins Oscar and the heroes. She doesn't even hint at the idea of joining the good guys whatsoever. All we've seen from her, all volume, is how devoted she is to Cinder. And now it's all just thrown out the window so she can switch sides.
Look, I'm just going to be super pissed if you all finally decide to give up the moment I switch sides.
The fact she actually words it like that makes my eyes roll so hard they threaten to spin out of my skull. And to be fair, Emerald has been hinting before that she isn't happy with being with Salem. And that's fine. That's one thing, but that was also 2 years ago, and her actions this volume doesn't seem to back up that mindset. All she did was chase after Cinder like a lost puppy until she suddenly became a good guy. And while she was hinting at the notion of leaving Salem's faction, there was nothing she had ever done that implied she wanted to join Oscar's forces, tag along with Team RWBY and Juniper to actively fight against Cinder. I could theorize she's just tricking them to get close, but it really doesn't look like that's the case. And even if that's what is happening, it doesn't excuse the fact that the heroes also just suddenly start trusting her. The girl who tricked Pyrrha into killing Penny, mentally traumatized Yang by making her think she broke Mercury's leg, attacked a maiden, attempted to kill the heroes multiple times. Suddenly, they're all just fine with her. There isn't even a scene where Emerald earns their trust. She just helps them with one small task and then everyone becomes all laughs and smiles. Ugh. I'm not against the concept of a villain getting a redemption, but you actually have to, like, redeem them. When the volume starts, we see all these cronies standing behind Salem. But don't worry, they don't really all have to try to play. Tyrion and Mercury head out ahead of schedule and flies away to Vacuo, and Hazel is stuck on child abuse duty.
Wait.
Yeah, Hazel is finally earning his stripes as a villain by beating the shit out of a tiny 14-year-old boy. Wow, that's pretty fucked up. But now, I guess that's what you gotta do. He was really likable and relatable before this volume. If we want him to be a real villain, he needs to do some irredeemable things. Wait, what? He gets a redemption too? Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, after having him literally torture the little boy, we try to turn him around and make him a good guy too. Oscar has one brief conversation with him and entirely changes his mindset following Salem. Hazel's inclusion in this volume feels rushed, tone-deaf, and you know what? I'm glad he's dead. At the end of the volume, Hazel sacrifices himself so the others can escape. You know what? Good riddance. With how sloppily they've been handling Emerald's redemption, I really don't want to see how they would have fumbled handling Hazel's attempted redemption too. His motives have always been wishy-washy at best, his fighting style is limited and kind of lame. Honestly, it's just a good thing he's not sticking around.
You can pretend, boy, but you're not fully him.
Oscar really gets put through the ringer this volume, and it kind of sucks. I hate seeing our sad little baby farm boy getting interrogated, tortured, and beaten like this, though really the biggest problem I have with Oscar's part in this volume is there's not enough of him. Oscar really needed to be given more screen time so he can have a real heart-to-heart with 3 people: Emerald, Hazel, and Ozpin. I can see that Oscar is supposed to be a main factor that convinces Em and Hazel to leave Salem's forces, but we really needed to see them spending a lot more time with Oscar to better convey that idea. It makes sense. Oscar's honestly the best fit to convince those around him to see the right path, along with Ozpin's forces. Oz, a hardened heart from years of hardships and betrayal, tends to come across as rather cold and calculating. Oscar is honest, endearing, and he's easy to talk to. He really lifts up every character he's in a conversation with. To better portray Oscar's role in convincing Em and Hazel to join Team RWBY, we would really need a little more screen time with him. What we got was a lot of Ozpin spitting facts, and Oscar mostly cuts in to divulge information Ozpin was too worried to reveal. What we needed to see was a lot more of Oscar's heart. Connect with Emerald and Hazel, not on a strategic level, but on an emotional one. That would have helped to convince me that Emerald and Hazel really wanted to switch sides, and help it feel like it doesn't just come out of nowhere. Oscar's impact on the story is amazing. I really just wanted to see a lot more of it.
Everything is already in motion.
Salem has finally taken the initiative. She's not relying on her lackeys anymore. She's coming in full force with her hordes of Grimm, and she really doesn't do much. Despite how jaw-dropping it was to see Salem arrive on top of Monstra at the end of last volume, this time around she kind of just goes back to sitting around and waiting for things to happen. The Grimm do all the work for her, and they really aren't that impressive. Well, except for the Hound. The Hound takes the cake in being the most impressive Grimm we have ever seen. It ragdolls Oscar easily. It's smart enough to think strategically. The other Grimm are even afraid of it. And then RWBY kills it in 1 episode. Yeah, the finale of the Hounds' arc was definitely more than a little disappointing. I don't know, I get the feeling that if it can body Oscar that easily, it definitely should have been able to tear through the Schnee household a lot easier than this. This episode is honestly one of the worst of the volume. Weiss forgets how to fight so her mother and brother can team up with her, which leads to Weiss trusting them again. Hell, Willow and Whitley are even the ones to actually kill the Hound. I don't know, it just kind of lackluster. It feels like it just happens too easily. Like, yeah, I get it, RWBY's silver eyes do massive damage to the Grimm, but I would have liked to see a cool fight at the very least. Instead, RWBY's adopted this annoying habit of standing stock still until her eyes finally turn on, which leads to less than impressive fight scenes. I also don't understand what the Hound was even doing. It showed up to the manor to help Penny get to the vault. Why did it suddenly start trying to attack her? It would have been a lot more fun if it was essentially teaming up with Virus Penny to wreck shop. And while everyone was trying to not kill Penny and avoid the Grimm, RWBY would have to struggle to activate her eyes in time to save Penny from escaping with the Hound. What we actually got was rushed, janky, and it only seemed to happen to fix Weiss's family issues, which is a shame. Back to Salem, I do have to admit she does engage in battle once, and it is really cool. It's crazy seeing our heroes trying to fight an immortal being who never seems fazed by any of the attacks thrown her way. It's like watching a level 2 Rattata fighting a Mewtwo. Her one fight may have been short-lived, but it definitely put the fear of God in me. When she shows back up to fight again, I'm gonna be on the edge of my seat worrying about it. She easily could have killed any of our heroes in this moment, and she very well might have if it wasn't for Hazel's sacrifice. Hazel gives Oscar just enough time to obliterate her with the built-up magic in Ozma's cane. It's really dramatic, and it's incredible seeing our heroes having to expend all their might just to hold Salem off long enough to scrape by with a hastily made retreat, knowing full well she's going to come back sooner or later. The climax of Salem's screen time was as epic and grandiose as I hoped it would be, and then there were 5 more episodes. Wait, what? So, yeah, at the end of episode 9, we handle the threat Salem posed against the heroes. We obliterate her temporarily, the whale is destroyed, and there's still 5 more episodes left to go. So what conflicts stand in the way of Team RWBY after this? What force pushes us towards the finale? Who's gonna be the bad guy going up against our heroes if Salem isn't around to do that for the climax of the volume?
I have always promised to defend this kingdom. Its technology, its future.
Ironwood is the most consistent character throughout this volume, which sucks, because he's also the worst character. This volume single-handedly took an intriguing character and ruined him in a matter of seconds. Everything about Ironwood that made him compelling for the last 7 years has been turned to shit in the span of this volume. Before the volume even started, the writers had a Q&A panel thing where they revealed what Ironwood's semblance is. Metal. It gives him hyper-focus on whatever it is he sets his mind to. Alright, that's fine. A little boring, but whatever. Unfortunately, it soon becomes clear his semblance only seems to exist as an excuse for his character to suddenly shift from this volume into an irredeemable ass.
Sometimes I'm not even sure he has a heart.
General James Ironwood. From the very beginning, he has been a uniquely complicated character, both kind and understanding, and simultaneously stern and harsh. During the Vital Tournament, when Yang was disqualified, he was the one who broke the news to Team RWBY. He was earnest and honestly disappointed for Yang being disqualified. Yet he also put his foot down and made sure that there wasn't going to be any sign of protest from the girls. Dad energy really is the best way I could put it. A man who has convinced himself that if he built an army big enough, they could withstand any force. A fleet of airships and dozens of robotic soldiers of many sizes accompanied him to a school festival. Prepared or paranoid? It's a fine line to cross. All of his planning, his soldiers, his machines, his armies, all of it. It was stopped in a matter of minutes. Suddenly, out of nowhere, his entire defenses have been turned against him. The one thing he fought so hard to defend against ended up being his ultimate failure. But he was going to make sure it never happened again. It no longer was questionable if Ironwood's precautions had an underlying air of paranoia threaded throughout his actions. Closing off the borders. No one in, no one out. It sounds so severe. But when you see what happened last time, can you blame him? And yet all this time, he still stood kindly by Weiss's side when she was trapped in the Schnee Manor, the only one who stood up for her. And when the kids meet him again, he proved he still had that overflowing dad-like energy to him. He would kneel to be face-to-face with Oscar. He spoke to him as if he was a trusted ally, despite the fact he greatly missed Ozpin's words of guidance. He was arguably one of the first ones to see Oscar for Oscar, rather than just Ozma's next vessel. He aided Team RWBY in any way he could manage. He made them huntsmen, he gave them upgrades to their weapons, he gave them access and clearance, and he did all of it with well-meaning intent and kindness. Until he found out that they lied to him. Suddenly, it's all coming flooding back. The lies, the mistrust, the fall of his soldiers, his machines turned off or against him, his armies in disarray. Was it all truly Team RWBY's fault? They didn't give him the whole truth, but neither did Ozpin. Who can he trust? Who can't he trust? How many levels of precaution will it take for him to finally succeed at keeping his kingdom safe? That was the state we had left Ironwood last volume. A complex man, racked with guilt, grief, and fear, determined to not fail again, and yet so suspicious of those around him. And what did Volume 8 do? In the very first scene he's in, Ironwood has crossed the line. This isn't playing on his notions of paranoia. This doesn't showcase his kind yet cold nature. This is a shitty cartoon villain. Everything about Ironwood's character that has made him so intriguing, so fun, has been thrown to the wastes to instead give us a laughable shell of the character we used to have. He hasn't developed into being a colder, heartless man. He could have. This definitely is something I could see happening to him by the end of the volume, but instead they've jumped the gun and made him crank his evil scale up to 11 in the very first episode. Ironwood makes dumb decision after dumb decision the entire volume. Most notable, working with Watts, asking Watts to hack into Penny and bring her back into his command. Yeah, the guy who hacked all of your forces before in Beacon, let's just trust him with hacking into your most powerful robot girl who's also a maiden. How about that? Isn't that a smart idea? It makes no sense Ironwood would do this. And worst of all, he doesn't even have Watts turn the heat back on. You know, the thing that was making Mantle near impossible to live in? After the shit with Watts pans out exactly how we thought it all would happen, Ironwood shifts focus to the whale. Blow it up. Drop a bomb on it. But before they can nuke the whale, Oscar does that himself. So there we go. The threat is neutralized. Just like he wanted. Now what's he gonna do?
Penny, wherever you and your friends are, I need you all to listen. Help me save as much of Atlas as I can, and Mantle will be left to fend for itself. You can all watch as I destroy it. I have one bomb. That's all it will take.
Bomb Mantle? Why? It's because he wants Penny to come back and work with him, but why is he just resorting to threats after threats? Why not reason with her? It makes no sense why he would just insist on killing everyone just to make Penny work with him. This is where that dumb semblance of his really seems to be forcing the script to pan out this lazily. Ironwood's entire place in this volume is so contrived and makes no sense. All they did was ruin a legitimately excellent character. To what? Give us another villain for this volume? When the volume started out, we had all of our villains on board. Why did we need to waste time with Ironwood and the Aesops doing the bad guy shit too? Roosterteeth does this all the time. They keep shoving some random side characters to be our final boss of the volume. Why? Why do we have so many members of Salem's forces if they're never gonna be our real villains for a single volume? So let me go over what I would have done with Ironwood instead of the tragedy that we got for him this volume. Ironwood is now on hyper alert mode. He doesn't think he can trust anyone around him, and he doesn't think anyone will take the right levels of precaution that he thinks would suffice this threat they're facing, especially now that Salem has double parked her whale right on their doorstep. Camilla and Sleet try to fight him over this, but he tells them they don't know what they're facing. He then has the two detained, so they can't get in his way anymore. Not killing Sleet. There's no need for him to kill an innocent man in this moment. He's even suspicious of the Aesops in Winter. After all, the Aesops lost to Team RWBY, and they were supposed to be Alice's elite. Did Team RWBY really outpower them? Or was he wrong? And they're not really good enough to trust with defending the kingdom. Winter also lost, and she lost the maiden powers and her own sisters on Team RWBY. Can he trust her too? Suspicious, but out of options, Ironwood keeps them around, forcing himself to trust them at least to some degree. Ironwood tries reaching out to Penny, but he gets shut down. He thinks maybe since she's the defender of Mantle, if he can turn the heat back on, that'll win over her trust in him. He gets his own team to work on fixing the problem, but they can't figure out how to fight off Watts' virus. The only man who might be able to do so would be Pietro, but when Ironwood calls out for help, it's the same answer he got from Penny. Out of ideas, Ironwood decides he has to try and make Watts fight his own firewall. Watts agrees to do it, but as he does that, he also secretly hacks into Penny's systems and uploads the virus into her, and Ironwood is none the wiser. Watts does turn the heat back on, but with the energy in the kingdom all working to keep the shields up, it doesn't really have the effect Ironwood was hoping for. Frustrated, he sends Watts back to jail. Ironwood's determined to fight this threat head-on. If he can kill the whale, then he can turn the shields back down and pump up the heat again, finally being able to convince Penny to join him. Or at least, he thinks so. The whale explodes, and when the Aesops returns, he tries contacting Penny, but she never answers. He's confused, frustrated. Why? Why won't she just listen to him? Why can't she trust him like he... Never mind. He asks about the prisoners they picked up before. Maybe if Penny hears they have them, she'll start to finally listen. And that's when Harriet reveals that Winter let them escape. How could she? He trusted her, and she betrayed him. He knew he couldn't trust her, can't trust any of them. Now Penny will never listen to him, now the maiden is lost forever, and now he'll never be able to get the staff and save his kingdom. No. No, he can't let that happen. He turns his robotic army back on and tells them to invade every house, every tent, look in every single nook and cranny. He has to find Penny, or Team RWBY, or Juniper, or Crow, any of them. He has to get to that staff. One way or another, he's going to do it. By having him fully give into his paranoia right at the end, his tactics that would usually be considered for safety have suddenly turned into an aggressive abuse of power. From this point on, you wouldn't really have to change anything with the rest of his actions in the show. He still gets tricked by the heroes in Winter, finally fully convincing him he can't trust any of them anymore, especially not Winter. Then after getting arrested, he kills Jacques because he's convinced himself that the whole Schnee family are his enemies, finally crossing the line and proving he's lost his heart. But that's not what happened. Instead, the writers decided to take the character who had the most potential to develop the plot for the show in a way that made sense, and instead made him a shell of a character he was before. He makes dumb decisions, out-of-character decisions that feel rushed and make little to no sense in-universe. They've just ruined Ironwood. Rather than take the time to finish off his development the right way, they decide to just go the lazy route and skip to the end. And for what? To give us another bad guy forced into the end of the volume, to steal screen time away from our heroes fighting the real villains. I've never seen RWBY drop the ball so hard for any character before. Like, you can be mad about how underdeveloped Adam was, but at least he didn't have 7 years worth of amazing character development suddenly ignored for no good reason. Ironwood is a stain on this volume. A rushed villain trying to take over Salem's role for the last few episodes of the volume. Oh yeah, and on that note, we should address that too. The way a story is supposed to be told is not a hard and fast rule. You can tell it out of order with many different plot threads. What RWBY's done here isn't even that unheard of, and it's actually something RWBY has done plenty of volumes prior to this one. However, the story suffers here, because almost everything that takes place in the last 5 episodes of this volume have hardly anything to do with the motivations from the rest of the volume. The biggest plot thread that gets carried into the last few episodes is Penny's virus. But rather than develop a conclusion to that conflict that elevates the characters and villains in a satisfying way to finish off our narrative, the writers instead throw a million new things at us. Ironwood's gonna drop a bomb, Penny's gonna be terminated, Emerald's a good guy, Neo has the lamp, Winter's leaving Ironwood, Marrow's teaming up with her, we have to fight Ironwood, Crow and Robin are teaming up with Winter and Marrow, and fight the Aesops. We have to stop the bomb, we have to make Penny a real girl, there's a genie in the staff, Penny's a real girl, there's a big magical doors, don't fall, gotta fight the Aesops again, surprise, the bomb is still a threat, gotta fight Ironwood again, Cinder uses the lamp, Cinder attacks Team RWBY, Yang's falling, more. The last 5 episodes dump all this shit onto us, and it all feels so painfully rushed. The same episode the heroes consider using the staff to fix their problems, we also get explained how the staff works. And it's also the same episode that they use the staff, and it's the same episode we introduce the idea of the magical doors and the threat of don't fall. That's way too much to jam into the third to last episode of the volume. If the writers knew the volume was going to end with the girls using the staff, they should have done a better job introducing the key concepts of the staff into the volume leading up to it. Like, they do their magical door thing, and I think it's supposed to be inspired by the Schnee FedEx shipping thing, snowshoe, it had a name, you know what I mean. But they never tell us if it's actually inspired by that or not. Why? It would have been much more entertaining if we saw the girls explaining how they came up with this idea, any pros and cons to making the doors work inspired from the system, and at the very least that concept got some setup. The moment they even consider the possibility that they can make Penny a real girl, they just turn around and do that, with seemingly zero effort, and nothing getting in their way. At the very least, we should have gotten an explanation on how the rules of the staff work before this episode. Osmond could have explained it to Oscar while they were trapped in Salem's whale. Maybe Ironwood could have explained it to Winter or someone. The finale feels rushed, way too rushed. Honestly, the last 5 episodes could have been a volume in and of itself. It definitely feels like they needed that much time to properly execute and establish all of the important elements to the the finale. On that note, the events of the first 10 episodes feel like they also could have benefited from much more attention to certain moments or characters, and that's exactly what I would have done. In my opinion, the volume's events could have ended at the end of episode 10. The girls are reunited, Ironwood threatens to drop a bomb, Cinder teams up with Watts, and the final shot of the volume would have been that shot of Penny still unconscious from the virus. And then the end credit scene could have been Neo skipping away with the lamp. That would establish our two main plot threads leading into the next volume, where we could properly develop everything that they've tried to just jam into these last 4 episodes. And if we're cutting that stuff out, that means we have potentially 3 to 4 episodes to give better development to the events we've already seen from episodes 1 through 9. Make the volume 13 episodes long. Give us an extra episode where we see Emerald talking to Oscar and Hazel, convincing herself of what she wants to do moving forward and away from Salem. Make the final fight with the Hound longer and a bit more of a threat to our heroes. Show us Team Jolly getting into the whale. There's definitely things we could have expanded upon that would have served a much more satisfying narrative in the end. I wouldn't be sitting here feeling like I missed something, like the heroes are solving their problems too easily, like character decisions are coming out of nowhere and feel rushed. But that's not how this volume went. There are those last episodes that take the plot into a different direction from the rest of the season. And I need to look at this volume as a whole for what it is, and not what it could have been instead. So let's take a look at I feel I need to split the finale episodes from the rest of this volume for my review, because in all honesty, they don't even feel related to each other. The last 5 episodes take everything into such a different direction from before, that it almost feels like it's the finale to a completely different volume. Worst of all, it's all just so rushed. It really does feel like this was supposed to be the first half of Volume 9, but then they realized Volume 8 didn't land on a very good cliffhanger, so they cut some stuff out and forced the first bit of their next volume into the end of this one to give us the Penny death moment as a good climax for their last episode. And yeah, Penny dies again. We'll get to that. I'm gonna say everything starts to feel sideways, starting with moments from episode 11. Specifically, Cinder teaming up with Watts. Neo is seen with the lamp, Emerald decides to join the good guys' side, and at the very end, the team gets an idea to use the staff to fix Penny's virus.
Kill me, and I can make sure the power goes to you.
Put a pin in this, we'll be coming back to that. Okay, so our plans for the last few episodes is to save Penny from the virus, stop Ironwood's bomb threat, and try to get the lamp back from Cinder and Neo. Episode 12 starts and we stop Ironwood. What? Yeah, one of our primary threats gets stopped just like that. This is also where the contrivances really start to become painfully abundant. The amount of times I feel like the plot is moving along in a contrived way starts to become truly irritating here. Ironwood, for some reason, has only the Aesops here with him. Even though he has access to thousands of soldiers and paladins and mechs and all of that shit, these 3 don't really look like an army to me, because Ironwood needs to lose here. So he arbitrarily tells the Aesops to leave, so it can only be Ironwood and Winter here now. Emerald tricks him and takes his weapon away. Oh, okay, sure, yeah, I get it. Ironwood's a strong fighter, so you gotta even the odds somehow. Take away his weapon, right? I mean, it's only 6 on 1. The odds already seemed pretty stacked in your favor. Who would want the fight to be fun on accident? First of all, this fight isn't even entertaining. It's short-lived and boring and lackluster choreography. We've started up that same old habit of having everyone run in one at a time, even though earlier this volume the combat had improved to the point where I didn't think this sort of thing would be happening anymore. Nope, it's all back down the drain. Winter gets some overly flashy finisher move and Ironwood's aura breaks. There we go, 1 plot point down. Was it rushed? Sure, but we gotta focus on saving Penny now, and we gotta figure out how to save all of Mantle and Atlas before Salem reforms with her Grim invasion. So that makes sense. We'll rush the Ironwood thing, it wasn't that interesting anyways, and we can have the final 3 episodes of the volume focus on this interesting conflict.
The Staff of Creation.
To save Penny and get everyone in Atlas and Mantle back to safety. Create a new version of her. Doorways in Atlas that open at a single spot in Vacuo?
Or I guess we can just fix this problem here too. Why? Why? Why set up all of these conflicts just to immediately solve them the very next scene? Worst of all, the way they actually solve these issues comes literally out of nowhere. The same scene they consider using the staff to help save Penny, they not only introduce the rules of the staff to us, they already have a solution that works around those rules that can give the heroes everything they want. Why? Seeing our heroes brainstorm to try to come up with a plan would have been fun enough to finish off this conflict. Why did we skip that part? Because the writers wanted to get to the falling part.
Do not fall.
Weiss literally pulls all the answers they need out of her pocket and makes the plot go away. It's so lazy. I wouldn't even want a long scene where we see them figure out what to do. Oh, this episode also starts with this confusing thing where they can't stay in order of time? Like, we keep jumping to flashbacks or moving back in time to explain what just happened, and I don't get it. It doesn't serve the narrative very well. All it does is show us the fight, then flashes back to the girls thinking of the staff, and then we skip over the interesting part where they explain what they're gonna do with the staff, and why not just put this in order? Rearranging that didn't help the flow of the story in any way. They do this with Cinder too. We see her flashbacking with the lamp and Neo, and it's like, why? It would have been a lot more entertaining if we kept up with Cinder alongside Team RWBY's plans. That way we would be wondering when or if the heroes would catch up on Cinder's actions and how they could potentially stop her, rather than just interrupt her fighting the heroes to explain to us how she got there. Just show us her getting there in real time. If it doesn't add anything to rearrange the events like this, then don't do it. If you have to interrupt the long-awaited rematch of Cinder versus RWBY, then maybe rewrite the events so you don't have to do that.
We're about to throw a kingdom's worth of negativity on their doorstep. Guys, this sandstorm isn't just killing visibility.
Hey guys, I'm starting to think Vacuo was a bad idea. Oh, but I know what you're thinking. The heroes definitely had a good reason to decide to dump an entire kingdom into a barren wasteland where it's filled with extremely dangerous monsters to an unreasonable degree. It seems like a bad choice to bring thousands upon thousands of civilians who have zero experience defending themselves against the harsh elements and the grim, especially when half of them are out of shape and the other half are malnourished. Oh, and there's children too. Lots of them. Don't worry, I'm sure the heroes have thought of this. There's definitely a good reason they've decided to take the whole kingdom here rather than somewhere like Mistral or Menagerie or Vale. Here, let me play that clip of them making their decision to go to Vacuo now. Oh wait, they literally don't even try to justify this decision, and I don't know why. Yeah, there's plenty of good reasons we as fans can theorize why they didn't choose any of the other locations. Vale might still be covered in grim. Maybe Menagerie is too crowded already. Maybe Mistral is still in disarray after their headmaster was murdered. Problem is, the heroes don't bother telling us any of this. And I'll tell you what, overcrowding and airport levels of confusion seem a whole lot more reasonable than dumping civilians into an empty wasteland filled with monsters that can easily eat them. We can theorize all we want why they didn't choose any of the other locations I talked about, but there's nothing that tells us why they decided to ignore any of those options and still landed on Vacuo despite how dangerous it is. Yang literally just suggests Vacuo out of nowhere. Jean implies maybe Vacuo, but we skipped the entire conversation that justified this decision later on, because the writers didn't want to actually bother explaining the chain of events that led to their cliffhanger finale. They just wanted to get us there as fast as possible. Now me, Judgmental Critter, I know that Vacuo was always going to be our next target. Obviously, Team RWBY has been kingdom hopping this entire show, and Vacuo is all that's left. It makes sense for Team RWBY to go to Vacuo, but it doesn't explain why they dragged an entire kingdom to Vacuo with them. Why not send the civilians to Mistral and then have a separate door that led Team RWBY to Vacuo? The absolute most painful part about this is that they very easily could have justified justified this decision.
So you're still going to Vacuo?
Yeah, they actually established this plot thread earlier in this volume. It would have been so easy for Emerald to say, hey, Tyrion and Mercury are already on their way to Vacuo, we should go there to stop them. At the very least, it would have justified their decision a little bit better. This was the plot point I was most impressed by. Ah, I see what you're doing there. Send Merc and Tyrion off so our heroes have a real reason to want to go to the next kingdom. But nope, it doesn't even get mentioned in any way. And then the heroes did the dumbest thing I could have imagined. They brought the fucking staff with them. Why? The whole point is to make sure the relics stay safe. You have the Winter Maiden. She is the only one who can enter this vault. Just lock the staff back away. You don't need to take it with you. There's no reason to take it with you when it would literally be the safest being put back into the vault. The only reason you took the lamp was because you couldn't trust Raven to not take the lamp at some other point in time. But that has proven over and over and over again to be a bigger problem for our heroes. Remember, the relics attract Grimm, a plot point that has been an issue for the heroes multiple times now. Not only that, but it's created a permanent target on their backs. The villains are sitting there attacking the heroes relentlessly because they're trying to get the relics. Taking it with them just feels lazy, especially since they don't even justify this decision with any sort of reasoning.
Do not fall.
Motherfucker, why would you give us this threat and then make the railways we're walking on weird squiggles all over the place? Why did they have to be so far apart to begin with? Why did they even need to be in this in-between void at all? Well, to give us the Yang falling scene. Cinder attacks and she does a RWBY classic of sitting stock still, monologuing while the heroes also sit stock still and let her monologue. I get that she's trying to distract the heroes, but that's dumb. If I saw the bitch who murdered several of my best friends and has openly admitted to wanting to kill me, I wouldn't sit patiently and let her finish her sentence. Yang sees Neo and charges forward, saving RWBY, but why? Yang has a projectile. Many projectiles. She had just cocked her shotgun gauntlets. Why didn't she just shoot Neo? Second, why didn't Yang tackle Neo? Why push RWBY out of the way rather than just sucker punching Neo instead? Third, when did Yang get 0 aura strength? Her semblance actively lets her take in damage to give her a boost in strength. Getting hit by Neo shouldn't have broken her aura. It's not even like her aura was previously weakened. She took a couple of swings at Cinder, but by all means her HP should still be totally fine. Yang can take a hole punch from a paladin, catch Adam's charged up sword, and be thrown from the Hound into a brick wall, and none of that shit breaks her aura. But one knife cut from a tiny little girl is enough to send her flying? Everyone can basically fucking fly. Penny can fly. Nora has recently gained the ability to fly. Blake's clones can help her or her friends reach high places after falling. Weiss can summon a bee, something she does later this fight even. Not only that, but she can instantly summon a glyph that her friends can stand on. RWBY's semblance not only gives her the ability to basically fly, but it's also super fast. By all means, there is no reason any of these bitches couldn't have saved Yang. Oh, but they were frozen with shock! No, they fucking weren't. RWBY alone, who was right next to Yang when she got hit, had enough time to kneel, watch Blake run past her, throw her weapon, Yang fall all that way, Blake got to scream and cry, RWBY was able to stand up and say Yang's name before Neo came to attack her. Also, RWBY had time to hear Neo's footsteps and turn to block her hit. Neo was doing jack shit to stop the girls from reacting to saving Yang. And are you really going to sit there and tell me that after 8 years of the show, after seeing her sister break a dude's leg, lose an arm, run after 2 maidens, and kill a crazy stalker, seeing her sister get pushed from a ledge would be enough for RWBY to be so fucking shook she couldn't be bothered to use her super speed semblance to save her sister? Especially since in this volume, we learned how her semblance works. Literally, it would have been even easier for her to save Yang than we could have initially thought, because weight and matter mean nothing to her when she does her thing. So it could have been the easiest thing in the world for RWBY to actually save her own sister. Oh, but then we couldn't get to push Bumblebee more. all the others do end up falling alongside Yang, and by all means, RWBY should have been the first one to fall. We all know Yang isn't gonna die from falling, and after watching everyone else fall one episode later, I couldn't help but sit here and wonder why Yang's fall was given so much emphasis compared to everyone else's. And after thinking about Blake's overreaction and RWBY's complete lack of a reaction, it's pretty damn obvious they just wanted to make another Bumblebee moment. RWBY isn't allowed to be upset over her sister's supposed death. Blake has to push out our ship bait some more. Blake gets to snarl and react angrily to Neo. RWBY gets pushed off screen and doesn't even get to make a facial expression, but Blake gets to scream and cry. RWBY doesn't even get to react once the lackluster fighting is over. Hell, even Weiss seems more concerned for Yang, at least she mentions her.
Come on, we have to do this for Yang.
Like, at this point, you could tell me RWBY doesn't have object permanence and literally completely forgets everything about her own sister the moment she isn't right in front of her, and I would 1000% believe you. This moment truly starts to highlight the painful fact that our heroes aren't allowed to actually be our main characters. We have to take time away from the fight between Cinder and Team RWBY to instead show us Ironwood breaking out of jail and the Aesops escaping with the bomb. We cut away from RWBY fighting Neo and Cinder attacking the team to instead show us Winter confronting Ironwood and Harriet crying over Clover. These side characters, the secondary nobodies, are getting the emotional moments from our finale. RWBY can't cry over her sister's death, but Harriet gets to cry over Clover. RWBY can't get a good fight with Cinder or Neo, but Winter gets to fight Ironwood. RWBY doesn't even get to be killed off first. Her importance is undermined by having Yang and Jean be the first and last ones to fall. It's basic cinema and storytelling. The first and last to do something are implied to be the most important. But no, RWBY, our supposed main character, fell in the random-ass middle of the fight. No attention, no development. Hell, RWBY barely even got to do anything this volume. She should have been the first to fall. Give us that Yang versus Neo rematch we've all been dying for, and give RWBY a big moment right at the end of the volume. But no, all that potential, any sort of moment we could have given RWBY all volume, instead kept consistently getting sidelined to push Blake X Yang into center screen. Yang is upset over fighting with her sister? No, she's thinking about her cat girlfriend. RWBY and Yang are happy to see each other after a long day of suffering. No, Blake and Yang need to have a romantic moment. RWBY gets to react even a little bit over the death of her only sister, the girl who practically raised RWBY, the second main character to be introduced in the whole show. No, the fucking cat gets to cry and scream because her girlfriend fell. Fuck RWBY, fuck her sister, fuck your emotions, and fuck this whole ass scene. Hell, RWBY, Yang, and Blake and Weiss all get shafted because, the fucking Aesops.
Clover he was
important to you.
Who gives a shit? Why are we carving out huge chunks of screen time to give to this fucking side-ass characters an emotional scene? A scene that, by all means, she's just stolen away from Crow. Oh, you remember him? The man who lost Clover last volume? The man who's been fighting with his own depression and emotions all his life? The man who was firmly asserted into our main cast in Volume 4, and has had everything ready to give him some truly emotional and deep character development? Crow? Does he get to react and grow from Clover's death? The death of a close friend? The death of the first person in such a long time he actually allowed himself to become close to? Does he get to grow? Nope. Instead, the fast bitch. You know, the one with like 5 lines of dialogue last volume. The one who was just introduced. The one who's never even once had a conversation with Clover on screen ever at all. She, her, that bitch. She's the one with the emotional moment over Clover's death. Fuck off.
Get out of the way!
Why does she say it like a baby throwing a tantrum? No, that's my toy! You can't play with it, it's mine! And then Vine dies. Oh no! Not another background-ass fucking character! This really feels like they're desperately trying to copy the emotional moment of Clover's death. only they forgot to actually develop any of these fucking side characters until just now. The side characters, the no-name nobodies, they get the emotional character development for the volume. If you really wanted to give our side characters development, then do it in the middle of the volume. Don't interrupt the entire finale. Don't cut away from our main protagonists. Don't forgo our real heroes' development to flesh out the characters who are little more than flashy cardboard. You know the fuckers who sit there and cry whenever Jean gets screen time instead of Team RWBY are the same ass clowns who sit there and beg the writers to develop random ass background fucks like the Aesops. Oh, Jean got a scene with lines of dialogue. Wah, what a self-insert. He is stealing screen time away from our heroes. What? The Aesops didn't get to have the ultimate climactic emotional moment of the volume with a 30-minute long diatribe to flesh out their characters further? Why? I liked them. Wah, fuck you.
But there is something you can do.
Here it is. This is it. Remember those pins from earlier? This is the thing. Why the fuck is Winter the new Winter Maiden? So let me explain this to you. Winter was going to be the new Winter Maiden, but then Penny became it instead. And then Penny was going to die, and then they saved her, just to then kill Penny anyways, and then give the Winter Maiden powers to Winter anyways? Yeah, let's make our robot a real girl, so then when she dies, she can actually feel the pain. That's great. I get the feeling the writers thought this was going to be a fun little twist, but it really doesn't come across that way. It instead feels like a gigantic waste of time. Penny's still dead, Winter's still the Winter Maiden, literally retconning the events of the entire last volume and this volume. Why did we bring Penny back to life just to kill her again? Was her inclusion really that necessary for the last few volumes? Was denying Winter the maiden powers really that important? Couldn't we have just jumped over all of this and gotten to the point to begin with? And I can already feel people charging up the excuses. Ew, Penny didn't have a choice before. Yeah, well, you know who did? The writers. The writers have actively chosen to do this roundabout-ass story that ends up making this whole entire volume feel like filler. Everything we've done, saving Penny, making her a real girl, saving the kingdom, fighting Ironwood, all of it, it all just feels worthless. Like it was all for nothing. And once you stop to really take like a whole 4 seconds to actually think about it, you realize the only reason they bothered to make Penny human was so she could perma-die. After all, we all know PHO can just bring Penny back to life. He's already done it once before. And I'm gonna explain what this whole plot point feels like by comparing it to something else that happened in RWBY. Penny's death reminds me of Lionheart's death. Leo Lionheart, by all means a dude with plenty of potential. It could be so interesting, right? A man deep in Ozpin's council, a man everyone trusts and has more power than most of his peers, secretly a member of Salem's council. And there's so many interesting possibilities this character can go. But that would take a lot of effort, wouldn't it? We wanted to reveal his double-crosser character in the finale for a real good zinger. What are we supposed to do with him now? The interesting aspect of his character has suddenly been dropped, and the character behind all that potential is now just gonna bloat screen time. We already have 6 villains to worry about. We don't really have the room or time to try to put Leo in with the rest of the plot. So, rather than just not reveal his true nature and keep up with the interesting facade of him being a double-crosser, they just kill him. Penny feels eerily similar. We can't include Penny into our main plot. We already have a million characters. We're already struggling to give them all something interesting to do all volume. How is Penny supposed to fit into the story anymore? Not to mention, now that she's a maiden, she's super overpowered. All of our fight scenes will have no good tension because RWBY can blast them with her silver eyes, and Penny can blast them with her maiden powers. So what do? Just kill her. But oh no, we've already established the concept that Penny can be resurrected. So in order to make sure this plot hole doesn't get trudged back up again, we gotta make her a real girl so we can really kill her. Ugh, it just makes me wonder, what the fuck was the point of bringing Penny back to begin with? If they didn't want to deal with their potentially immortal robot girl being a maiden, why did they A, make her the maiden to begin with, and B, bring her back at all? If you don't want her to be the maiden, or join Team Heroes, then you could have easily just kept her dead. By all means, there was no reason we had to bring her back. I mean, yeah, we all sat there and theorized she could have potentially been rebuilt, but if the writers didn't want to do that, just You don't have to, guys. I don't like thinking that the writers change the actions of the story just to give the rabid fans what they want. I really don't. However, it's becoming more and more challenging for me to actually believe that. People say they want Penny back, I guess we gotta bring Penny back. Oh, but Penny doesn't fit into the longer narrative for the rest of the story, so I guess just kill her again. That's the important part. Again. Penny already died. I already shed tears over Penny's death. We've done this already. And I know the writers really want to make their fans cry over events that already happened in the better volumes of the show. Oh, wah, Pyrrha. Fucking gag. But all of this, everything about Penny, I couldn't help but sit here and think over and over and over again, what was the fucking point? What was the reason? Did it change the events of the plot? No, Winter was going to be the maiden, and Penny was already dead. She could have just stayed dead and make Winter the maiden right off the bat. That would have saved us a volume worth of building up the interesting character elements of Penny, being potentially a real girl and being a maiden, just to throw all that out the window in the last episode of the season. Did it affect the characters? Help them grow? No, Penny's dead. Again. Ruby's already cried about this. We've already mourned her death. Hell, by all means, the rest of the cast didn't even give a shit about Penny being brought back in the first place.
This is strangely wholesome. Sounds like Penny to me.
Hell, aside from Ruby and Nora, no one else even really bothered to talk to Penny. So why did we do this? What was the point? What did we gain aside from a cheap-ass climactic twist? Why was Winter wearing her outfit from Volume 7? Is because that was literally the last time she and Penny ever even talked about each other? Why was Jean the one to kill Penny? Jean literally never talked to her. Not even when she was alive the first time around, not when she was alive the second time around. It feels like it was only Jean because they wanted that shot of Jean's eyes reflecting on his sword. However, it very easily could have been Weiss. Hell, at least Weiss have talked to Penny at all. Jean wasn't even on the same team as Penny this volume. If they swapped Jean with Weiss, then they could have done something neat with Jean fighting Cinder. She could be like, "You again? Why won't you just die?" And then while they're fighting, we could see her sword heating up Jean's sword, so then when it shattered, it would make a bit more sense. Although, with how poorly Kara was phoning in her lines for Weiss this volume, maybe it's a good thing they didn't try to give her the emotional climax of it.
We did it.
Though in all honesty, it would have been best to just swap Weiss with Ruby. I already talked about the idea of having Ruby fall first, but having her fall last would have arguably been even better. Have Weiss fall with Blake instead, so all that's left is Jean, Penny, and Ruby. Cinder's remark of,
"It figures that a Schnee would be the last one standing, letting all her friends die first,"
sort of makes sense now that we know about her situation as a child, but it would have made much more sense to push the dynamic between her and Ruby. You know, the girl she's been wanting to kill for years now. Have Jean distract Cinder and give Penny one last emotional moment with Ruby, her best friend. And to avoid the conflict of why not give her powers to Ruby, just have Ruby tell Penny she doesn't want it. After watching all of her best friends fall into the void trying to save her from attack, Ruby would be feeling like she doesn't deserve the maiden powers. She'd be feeling guilty and down on herself. After all, she didn't want any of this. She just wants to be a normal girl with normal knees. She's already got these dumb silver eyes. That's caused enough heartache for those around her. What would having the maiden powers do? Who else would be getting hurt? Then, when Winter is rushing towards that final door, Ruby could push herself and use her speed semblance to try to reach the door in time. Then when she just barely misses it, it would have hurt a lot more, because we would have been like, "Oh yeah, she's gonna use her speed, she's definitely gonna make it in time." Just to have that pulled out from underneath us? That would have been quite the way to end the volume. Honestly, all of the pieces are here to make this final episode feel like actually good. You just need to rearrange some things a little bit, but the fact that they couldn't even have done that makes it feel like this was just a first draft. Like they didn't have the time to look at it and go, maybe we can change some of these events around to make the flow of action and character development feel a little more satisfying. Nah, we ain't got time for that shit. This episode needs to air in the next few days. Just chill it out as it is. Oh boy, Penny's dead. Now Cinder will have no idea who the Winter Maiden is. Now she'll have to try to figure out who got the Winter Maiden powers, and that could be interesting. Nope, never mind. Despite having the advantage of being anonymous, Winter floats her ass in and lets Cinder flat out know who her our next target's going to be. What a good idea. If this was how the volume was going to end, then the writers should have done their jobs and actually set this up, instead of literally just coming out of nowhere. Winter was one of the side characters, someone who had barely anything to do all volume. She gets to be the maiden. What a joke. By all accounts, it should have been someone in the main cast. Ruby, Weiss, Nora, Yang, Blake, Emerald, any of them would have been better, because it's become painfully apparent that the maidens are our real protagonists. Salem only gives a shit about the maidens. We need the maidens to get the relics. By giving our heroes the maiden powers, it would mean they actually get to play a real role in our main plot. Nora and Emerald are quietly ejected out of the conflict, and everyone else gets glossed over to instead highlight rando sister bitch floating in to save the day. Nora has spent her entire time this volume talking to the others about how she wants more of herself. She wants to do more, have a bigger part in their efforts. By all accounts, it felt like we were setting up the idea of Nora getting the maiden powers instead. Nora got to have an emotional moment with Penny. Ruby has been the closest person to Penny since her introduction. Winter has a name that makes it sound like her powers are a pun. Everyone falls. All the civilians are trapped in the desert, and we get hinted at the idea of the fallen heroes might actually still be alive, because I was so worried our main team had died. Yes, Roosterteeth has once again fallen into that same old technique. A million crappy cliffhangers to desperately try to convince you to come back next year. Jesus Christ. These egregious cliffhangers just feel like lemon juice on a paper cut. The finale was already rushed, sloppy, and boring. You're really gonna tease an interesting train of events after all the confused shit we just sat through? You're not even gonna pretend to give us a real conclusion for the volume? Everyone's either presumed dead or still fighting, the only exception being Crow and our beloved Aesops, who are just floating around not doing jack shit. Oh yeah, and Robin. Wowie gee, I'm sure I'm glad that bitch is still alive. We had to kill Penny again, but we gotta keep fucking Robin around. Crow doesn't even know what the fuck just happened either. They have no idea everyone's been zooped into vacuo at best, or at the Yggdrasil tree at the most questionable destination. Oh no, Cinder got the relics. It's almost like having our heroes randomly drag the staff around with them was a stupid idea, and this very easily could have been avoided. So let me get this straight. Cinder used the Staff of Creation to create fire to do destruction. Sure, who fucking cares anymore? Surprise, Watts is dead now too. Yep, just like Hazel, Watts got offed the moment he actually became a cool guy, and I was actually jazzed to see him do a lot more teamed up with Cinder. But nope. Let me remind you that in this volume, we had two of our main antagonists die, and they were both killed by other villains. I'm like, hell, just keep Team RWBY over in Star Tropics. The villains are doing a better job at stopping the forces of evil than they ever did. Though I guess I can't be too surprised. After all, the last time a member of Team RWBY actually stopped a main antagonist of the show, the internet shit itself because their favorite piece of character art never lived up to the lofty expectations that they put upon them from their numerous fan fictions. These last few episodes really are painful, like on a different level. It's so disappointing, crushingly so, because I was loving the volume before this. I was in love with every single episode. I was singing its praises, I was defending every character arc and every scene. It was so good. And then this happens. Why? How? It's so rushed, sloppy, ugly, boring, and I don't know why.
Then nothing has changed! We're in the exact same place we were yesterday!
I feel like I need to speak on the meta of this volume, because I'm assuming someone in the comment section is gonna bring it up, and I want to be able to address this as best I can. Clearly, shit happened in regards to Roosterteeth Studio. What with the whole world being on fire thing, the team had to quarantine themselves. I was honestly pretty concerned with how this might affect the production of the show, and I was surprised that it was actually still so good. Episode 4, the one where Ren and Yang have that really big argument, was actually the first episode to be entirely animated with the crew staying at home. And that's really cool. This is one of the best episodes, and it's also one of the most beautifully animated ones. The 360 around Yang and Ren looks amazing. There's a lot of dynamic shading in a lot of these scenes. There's a whole ass chase scene with a fight, Salem interrogates Oscar, Cinder plans to leave, and all of these scenes are gorgeous. And the animation is some of the best we've ever seen. So clearly, the quarantine wasn't affecting the quality of the show. By all means, everything should have come out perfect. Especially when you remember that RWBY took a 6-week hiatus in the middle of the volume. After episode 7 aired, we had to wait 6 long weeks for the show to come back, and I'll be 100% honest, I have no idea what the fuck they were doing that whole time. The animation becomes so rushed, so sloppy, so bad. The facial expressions start to look more and more vacant or off-putting. The characters start to move really jerky motions. There's so little fluidity. And more the characters start to just sitting around, or standing around, or doing jack fucking shit, regardless of what's going on. We've seen these tactics before. Standing around, not moving, pushing the combat off screen so you don't have to animate it. Roosterteeth has made these mistakes before, and I thought they had learned this lesson. Penny's reaction to watching her best friends plummet to their death looks like she just smelled a bad fart. And I've already talked at length about how they couldn't animate a single frame of RWBY looking at all concerned for her sister's death. Winter deploys her second sword at the end of an episode, but then she just deploys it again in the next episode. Neo walks super slowly towards RWBY, who is prone and whose aura has shimmered. So rather than charge in and just stab the bitch, Neo soaks forward like an Ironwood robot stuck on autopilot. I'm filled with bloodlust, and I want to get revenge and kill this girl. That means I gotta move 1,000,000 times slower than usual. Cinder hits Weiss with the butt of her sword, and I'm just like, why didn't you just cut her? Not only that, it doesn't even look like she was actually hit. Weiss falls over like she's getting seasick on her daddy's yacht. Not like she's in a death match with the bitch who wants to kill her and already killed her friends. Hell, the fact that Cinder fights Weiss long enough to let Jean kill Penny is stupid in the first place. All she wants is Penny's maiden powers. That's literally the only thing she's cared about doing this entire volume. And now finally, Penny is in your grasp. She's dying right in front of you. Rather than grab Penny's body and fly away with her so you can just kill her off in peace, Weiss just starts fighting her. And she ignores Penny to fight Weiss. Why? Why? Why are you just letting yourself get distracted with this Schnee bitch instead of doing the smart thing and finishing off your mission? It's all so rushed and confusing and ugly and boring and annoying. Why did you need 6 weeks to shit out a terrible product? If you needed more time, by all means take more. Hell, during production, that really awful snowstorm hit Texas, and they had to take a week off to accommodate their employees' safety during those times. Good. Yes, by all means, yes, take all the time you need. That's some real shit you have to deal with. Rather than rush through the volume and potentially endanger your employees, just go back on hiatus. We'll understand. And if anyone wants to throw a tantrum over that, they can go fuck themselves anyways. I bet those are the same ass clowns who sit there and pirate the episodes anyways. Worthless fucks. The Tuesday before the final episode aired, Carrie tweeted out that he was watching it being exported. They exported the last fucking episode 5 days before it aired. I thought they learned from this already. Do you not remember Volume 5? Where you were exporting the finale hours before it was meant to air? What was the point of your 6-week-long hiatus if apparently it didn't help you actually animate the last half of the volume with the level of quality it deserved? This volume is so fucking frustrating. It's like watching someone make a really big, super cool tower made out of cards, and then right when they're gonna put the last card on top, it all just blew over. Because the writers didn't know what they were doing. I'm just so befuddled by the actions of this finale, by the course of actions for this volume. We wasted 10 episodes building up the Hound just for him to die unceremoniously. We waited 10 episodes establishing the threat of Salem on our doorstep just to ignore her and make Ironwood a bad guy. We wasted 10 episodes of the volume not discussing the concepts of the staff, just to immediately dump all of that exposition right before they use it. If the writers knew the volume was gonna end here, then they should have put the breadcrumbs that led us here throughout the volume. That way the finale wouldn't feel like it's literally coming out of nowhere. By all means, the only thing all volume that convinces me that this was actually what they legitimately planned to do with the volume, and they didn't just rush out the next few episodes to get a cliffhanger moment, is the opening. Worst of all, this finale doesn't just feel rushed or like it came out of nowhere. I can't help but watch this finale and get a sickening sense of deja vu. It's baffling. All of these plot points feel like watered down repeats of plot points we've already seen, both from this volume or from the volumes prior, and it's confusing. Harriet is sad about Clover. Again. Winter needs to fight Ironwood. Again. Penny dies. Again. Yang gets injured. Again. Cinder loses the maiden powers. Again. The Winter maiden powers change hands. Again. Cinder fights Penny and Winter. Again. The villains get the relic. Again. Jean handles a maiden's death. Again. Cinder loses the maiden powers. Again. All of these things just feel so awkwardly familiar, yet just so much sloppier.
I hope it was worth it.
Was it? Was it really? I don't understand what happened. This volume is exhausting. Hell, look at my review. I've had to separate the majority of the plot and character progression from the events of the finale because it barely feels connected to anything that was happening beforehand. Again, they do this all the time, where the end of the volume slams a brand new fucking plot out of nowhere. The only difference this time is usually the abrupt plot for the finale involves a Grimm invasion. This time around, it's the opposite. Ooh, so unique. I'm just so confused. Frustrated. I can't explain myself. Like, I could keep on ranting, but I'm not gonna solve anything. Because the mistakes here are so basic, you'd have to be an idiot not to be aware of the problem here. There's just no setup whatsoever for the finale. Events retcon prior events. There's no emotions from any of the characters. The animation is too rushed to deliver any satisfying combat scenes or character moments. Gotta make sure that shot of Penny's feet look really good, but don't bother animating Ruby's face. I'm calling it now. The commentary for this volume, everyone will be freaking out about animating Penny's fucking feet. Bonus points if someone makes a stupid RTAA reference. So to answer Ruby, I really don't know if this was worth it. Any of it. I feel more lost than ever before. And you know, this has been a ton of complaints. Well-deserved complaints, but complaints nonetheless. And I really don't want to have my issues with the volume distract from the parts I liked, because there are a lot of things I did actually really love. Remember, I said this volume was a beautiful mess, and the finale is a mess. But there was a lot that I thought was beautiful. Can the good parts of the volume fix the problems with the finale? No, of course not. But in that same line of thinking, I shouldn't let the parts I hated ruin how I feel about the parts I loved. So to put an end to my rant about the last handful of episodes for the volume, I would like to get to gush about everything I loved, put a little positivity back into this review, and just be happy for a moment. Fiona's uncle is adorable, and one of my favorite designs for a background character. I wish they'd play around with different proportions like this a lot more. I also love seeing all the happy huntresses a lot more, especially May. She's actually super cool, and I love how she's like kind of bitchy. It's a lot of fun. The Hound is really cool, and I thought his introduction was one of the most thrilling moments, even with the questionable pacing. And while I might lament how easily he was beaten, the concept that Salem can use silver-eyed warriors to create more powerful Grimm is incredibly unique. I really hope they make this plot point become really cool. Nora's moment of being strong and hitting stuff is not only emotionally powerful, but I also love the fact she's been permanently scarred by this. I was a little worried they were gonna have Jean heal the scars away, and I'm really glad they didn't. I love the lesson that some actions you take are irreversible and leave long-lasting effects. Since our main cast is waltzing around with indestructible plot armor on, that means I'm never too worried they're gonna die, obviously. But permanent physical injury is still totally viable, and I like how a character other than just Yang gets to develop like this. Nora now not only looks super cool with her scars, but it's a constant reminder of her growth, and I love it. Penny versus the Aesops was probably the best fight in this volume, though Penny versus Cinder was also very enjoyable. The Aesops use a lot of cool techniques to fight off Penny, and I like how the scene really accurately portrayed the idea of Penny's powerful strength now that she's a maiden. She handles 4 Aesops perfectly fine, all on her own, and it looks awesome too. I love seeing Ren finally snap and put all his emotions out for everyone to see. Ren is actually a lot more complex than I ever expected, and I'm glad Volume 4 wasn't his only time to shine. Penny falling from the virus is incredibly powerful cinematography, and her line of legitimately hits me right in the heart every time. Cinder's backstory was great. Although I realize it didn't add much to the volume in the long run, this has been something I've been dying to see. Well worth the wait. I love how the Hound chases the Schnees through the halls. It's actually a heart-pounding moment, and I wasn't even sure if they were going to live. Also, I like how we see Willow using a summon to save her son. It was a surprisingly smart way to introduce the fact that she can use her glyphs and summon, and we didn't have to stop and have a character gawk about it. Also, while I think Whitley suffers from being a dumb background character that too many people in the fandom keeps begging for more screen time for no good reason, and I honestly think he just needs to stay in the fucking background where he belongs so our real characters can actually get to develop for once, his turnaround to being helpful was at least sweet. Family and all, you know? Salem's fight was fun, all the way around, and I'm glad Hazel was cool in this fight too. At least he got to shine right at the end. Watts dunking on Cinder was amazing. Some of the best character dialogue we've ever gotten for the show. And by all means, I wish he lived to continually put Cinder back in her place. Not only that, but the fact that Cinder looks like she just realized he was right is perfect. I would love it if we could develop Cinder more. Really flesh her out, especially in front of the heroes, so her only expression during combat isn't to smile like she solved a crossword puzzle. Develop Cinder's character. Not Whitley, not the Aesops. Cinder, please. This shot is just real dang pretty, right? Ruby and Yang's talk about Summer was probably the sweetest conversation the sisters have ever had. I like how Ruby decides to stay upset. After being sickeningly sweet and optimistic all the time, it's incredibly refreshing seeing her finally have a moment of disappointment. This whole volume feels like a breaking point for a lot of characters. I'm glad Ruby doesn't just stay moody, and I'm even more glad it was Yang's words that helped her get her back out of it. Flip side, it's nice seeing Yang being the vulnerable one during the scene. Yang doesn't cry in front of Ruby often. However, that convo ain't got nothing compared to Nora and Ren's moment. I even like Jean's comedy in this scene. And Ren's melts my heart and gives me life. Well done. This is like one of the best scenes in the entirety of the series. Take notes, fam. While I have many gripes with the finale, there are still moments I enjoyed. Ambrosius is a top-tier best boy. I love how he's way more fun-loving and casual compared to Jin's lofty formality. Inside of the vault looks cool. I don't know if you noticed, but the spring vault looked like summer on the inside, and the winter vault looks like spring on the inside. Maybe they fucked up when they were naming these maidens, huh? Penny dying, while contrived and marred with issues, did make me cry. I will admit it. These shots with Penny begging Jean to kill her was actually very heartbreaking, and I congratulate Miles on his voice acting, and the animators for at least making this moment look really polished for the finale. Moving forward from Volume 8 is very concerning for the show. I mean, I'm still gonna watch it. Come on, guys. One bad finale isn't gonna make me give up on watching it as a whole. Hell, I sat through Volume 5 and I'm still here, aren't I? I don't know how to feel thinking about the potential of Volume 9. The easiest way I could put it is high hopes, low expectations. While I am very curious to see how the events will continue to pan out, I have very little faith that it will be executed in a way that will be satisfying. I expect the animation to be rushed, or the conflict to be confusing, or something to come out of nowhere and change everything. We're really in all new scenarios now, and I don't know what I can really predict. The fact that our heroes have been split into groups again is a good thing to me. Keeping our heroes in these bite-sized chunks seems to benefit the flow of development and conversation. I know the team I'm the most looking forward to seeing is Team Honor. Honor. O-N-E-R. Honor. That's what I'm calling it. Honor. That's what I'm... Dibs, I'm calling it Honor. Mostly because I have more of a solid idea of what that could actually end up happening with these characters, and I might get to see Coco again. Yeah, baby. However, I also get the sinking feeling that it'll be awfully similar to Volume 7, where our team will be given busy work for most of the volume before some other character stumbles into the real plot 4 episodes before the finale. I know the characters I'm the least looking forward to is the Golden Oldies. Not only is Crow stuck permanently affixed to 4 of the dumbest, most annoying characters they forced into center screen, but I also don't want to see them desperately try to tie Maria and possibly Pietro back into the plot after the writers have proven 10 times over that they have zero intention on having them actually do anything worthwhile. The villains are in a unique position, but as usual, I have no idea what they're going to actually do. Hell, nowadays, I don't think they even know what they're going to do. It'll be either a 27-step-long convoluted plot that relies on about 4 contrivances or coincidences to actually happen, or they'll just stumble into winning before Cinder fucks everything up and loses again. The kids trapped in the Alice in Wonderland Deku tree are the ones I'm the most curious about, but I have no idea what could possibly happen. Worst of all, Neo is the only villain trapped there with them, and I'm hoping they choose to kill Neo off, and I really hope it doesn't become an Emerald 2.0. Mostly though, I'm worried the adventures in Legend of Zelda's Link's Awakening will end up just feeling like filler, like an excuse to not have Team RWBY be with the other heroes for some reason, and then when they get reunited with their friends, they won't ever address the events that happened here again. But I also feel like I'm being unnecessarily pessimistic. Yeah, the finale was a bummer, but the rest of it was really good. I can't judge Volume 9 before it even happens. That wouldn't be fair. As for Volume 8's attempt to get me hyped for Volume 9, well, they need to learn cliffhangers don't make for good endings to volumes. I really don't know what else I can say about this volume. I think I've covered everything I could, and this video is already really long. Jesus, look at that! I wish I had something more profound to say, but I can't really think of anything eloquent enough to finish off such a massive video. I hope you liked Volume 8, and if you didn't, I hope you at least learned something from it. Thanks for watching this video, especially if you actually sat through the whole thing. And now to finish off Volume 8, I present to you all of the penny robot jokes I never got to make.
I look forward to seeing how you express yourself. Hey, Tilda.
Once I pair my disguise with my perfect human impression, the illusion will be complete. I sure do like hanging out with other humans and talking about things like money and starting wars.
That guy Tex is really a robot, and you're his boyfriend. So that makes you a gay robot.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a gay robot.
You appear to be bored. You appear to be bored. You appear to be bored. Abort conversation.
I couldn't help but notice your particular mode of dress.
Are you trying to make fun of me?
I believe there is no need for that. That outfit does it for you just fine.
Oh, Tin Man's got teeth.
Bitch, dumpster.
I need to practice my human emotions. Do I look convincingly sad?
Won't it be great to encounter other humans and talk about which roads and pathways will take us somewhere slightly faster than other roads and pathways?
It is so true. We do love going slightly faster.
We should do some activities. Would you like to go to the gymnasium? Would you like to play whack-a-mole? Would you like to go swimming?
Your cadence is so strange. I honestly have no idea what you're saying. Like, are these things mutually exclusive?
They are not.
See, now I'm interested.
And if it all take, and if all of it takes, shut it down.
Alright, I want to give a very big, super special shout out to my $10 patrons, because you're all amazing. Nako, Michael, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, G-Extreme, Classy Critic, Surge, Taj, Boulder Off Bros, Noah Perkins, Sunny Shy, Great Bar, Caleb Grimm, Pentamenta, War Thunder, Diego, Forgotten Schnee, Carmen, Order, Vortex, Sarah's Van, Soren, and Mookie. This was a lot. This was a lot. This is my biggest video ever, and it's a lot. when I was recording the audio for it, my throat was getting so sore because it was taking like hours to record, and it's all finally put together, and I'm super happy with it. I hope you liked it. This was a lot of fun. Volume 8 has been a real roller coaster, hasn't it? Tell me your thoughts and opinions. I talked about everything, so you can tell me everything. What do you think of the volume? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Any and all everything. And, like, what are you excited for with Volume 9? I want to hear it all. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.